My mom and brother-in-law are going to be away for a while, so I decided to take care of my sister and niece. When I told them, my sister and niece smiled smugly. I couldn't hide my frustration and bit my lip. I know you don't like them, but they're my blood relatives, so it's natural for me to care for them. If you can't accept that, divorce is an option, my husband said. It's clear his family always comes first. Even though I struggle with housework and taking care of our child, he never helps me. So, why does he make his sister his priority? As his wife, I'm not powerless. He'll regret underestimating my efforts. My name is Sophia. I'm 37 years old. I live with my husband, who I met during school, and our 9-year-old son. Right now, I can't find a full-time job. My first job made me tired of dealing with people, so I work part-time while taking care of our son. I try to contribute to our finances, but I often feel exhausted and dizzy. I hand my husband what little money I can each month, saying, "I'm sorry." He always reassures me, "Don't worry about it." He respects my wishes, even when people tell me to just be a stay-at-home wife. I want to work, but my health doesn't always allow it, which makes me feel bad. When my son started elementary school, I got more time for myself and started feeling better. I eventually switched from part-time to full-time work and began enjoying my job. My husband and I met in high school. He was the class leader, serious and kind. Back then, I was a loner, but he always looked out for me. I fit into my class easily and don't have many bad memories from that time. My husband confessed his feelings to me on graduation day, and that's how we started dating. Eventually, we got married and had our son, Timothy. Timothy has always been cautious around others and isn't fully independent yet, but seeing him grow a little each day warms my heart. However, our happy days started to change suddenly when my husband's attitude toward me shifted. I had a feeling it had something to do with his older sister. The change began around the time my job was going well, and his sister had a traffic accident. My husband has 3 sisters, an older one and a younger one. I don't see them often, only a few times a year. He's always been very kind and caring toward them, which I used to think was sweet. When his older sister had her accident, I wasn't sure if I should visit her. I stayed home with Timothy, but then my husband, Stephen, called me. "Hello," I answered. "Hi, Sophia," he said casually. As I was about to ask if I should go see his sister, he said, "You don't need to come." I was surprised. "Why not? Shouldn't I visit her as your wife?" "Actually, Kelly doesn't want to see you," he said with a laugh. Kelly is his younger sister. He added, "I'm with Kelly and Helen right now, but they both don't want you here." I felt hurt, but my husband didn't seem to care. He often uses Kelly's words to tell me to stay out of certain things, which makes me feel unwelcome. "How is she doing?" I asked, worried about his older sister. "She's fine. Don't worry about it," he said with a heavy sigh. "Sophia, you're so insensitive. This is my family's problem, not yours." Then he hung up without letting me speak. I felt like he was being selfish. His family, especially Kelly and my niece Helen, have always been cold toward me. Helen acts distant, and Kelly sometimes treats me nicely, but other times she makes me feel like I stole her brother away. My husband, meanwhile, treats his sisters like princesses. It's hard to deal with. Even my son, Timothy, gets harsh looks from them. As I hugged Timothy, who seemed worried, I tried to stay calm and said, "Let's have dinner." Timothy looks more like me than his father, which I thought might make things easier, but it hasn't helped much. People have asked me if Timothy is really Stephen's child. We had Timothy before we got married, which might be why Stephen doesn't stand up to his family. Once, he even joked coldly, "If Kelly's right, we're getting a divorce." I always deny it with a smile, saying it's not true. I never thought Timothy would hear such a ridiculous idea, but one day he told me, "Dad said that." It's crazy to say something like that to your own child. That night, Stephen didn't come home, but Timothy and I had dinner and went to bed peacefully. The next day, Stephen came home with Kelly. She's still in high school and was wearing her uniform. As soon as they arrived, Stephen said, "Hey, Sophia, why didn't you prepare dinner?" "Kelly had to cook yesterday." I was shocked. "It was just us yesterday, so I made something simple," I explained. Stephen ignored me. Kelly is here. Didn't you make anything? It's hard to prepare on such short notice, I said. Kelly chimed in. That's terrible. I wanted cheesecake, especially from the shop near the station. I hadn't been told they were coming, but I apologized anyway. Kelly made more demands. The cake shop is popular, so get in line and buy one. Oh, and I'd like a chocolate cake too, she said. They both ignored me as I tried to explain. Instead, Stephen grabbed my hand, led me to the door, and said, "Be back by 5 p.m. since Kelly is here." Then he pushed me out the door without giving me a chance to speak. He didn't give me any money, and it was less than 40 minutes until 5 p.m. It felt impossible to get the cake in time. Feeling disheartened by Stephen and Kelly's selfishness, I got into the car. When I returned, Kelly scolded me. "You're late. My train leaves in 20 minutes. I'm sorry. It's rush hour," I explained. "There are back roads, Sophia."
"Can't you think of that?" she snapped.
Stephen laughed and agreed with her. I had already taken the fastest route, but they didn't care. Frustrated, I bit my lip and went to my room to change, feeling completely defeated. As soon as I left, Stephen and Kelly started playing a game. Kelly opened a box of cake and said, "Oh, there's another cake here. Is this for Timothy?" Stephen replied, "Timothy won't be back soon, right? Just get him a new one from the supermarket." With Stephen's approval, Kelly happily ate Timothy's portion of the cake. I was speechless. Didn't they care about Timothy at all? Stunned, I left them laughing and playing their game in the living room while I went to do the laundry. Later, Stephen and Kelly went out for dinner. They didn't return by 5 p.m. like they said they would. If they weren't planning to be back by 5, why did they rush me earlier? When Kelly finally returned, I spoke to Stephen about it. He grumbled, "My older sister is in the hospital and my mom and brother-in-law are there too. Can't you be a little more considerate of Kelly?"
"It's not about that," I said.
"If you're not coming back by 5, don't rush me." "Oh, stop making such a big deal about it," he said, covering his ears. "I really meant to be back by 5. Next time, just make sure you prepare the meals properly." "I would have if I had known they were visiting today," I replied. But I wasn't told anything. Stephen didn't care. Everything always revolves around Kelly, and he never listens to me. After that, Kelly started visiting more often, and eventually Helen, my niece, began coming too. Helen is in middle school and acts like an older sister to Timothy. Timothy enjoys playing with her, which makes me happy, but I worry because Kelly is harsh on him, and Stephen never says anything to stop her. Over time, I noticed Helen started acting cold toward me too. One day, I asked, "Have you already eaten?"
"Yeah."
"Mom said we should eat as a family," Helen replied. It was Timothy's birthday. I had told Stephen to come home early for it, and he remembered. He even took the afternoon off, but instead of coming home, he went straight to his family's house with Timothy. When they came back, Helen handed me a present, and Timothy casually mentioned they had already had a party there. Both of them were full, even though I had spent the day preparing Timothy's favorite dishes and a cake. No one had told me anything. If I had known, I wouldn't have gone through all the trouble. I wouldn't have cooked so much if I had known. Why do you prioritize work so much? Timothy said Grandma was upset with me. I didn't know we had plans to go there, I replied. You should have understood or checked, Timothy told me. Apparently, Kelly had made the birthday plans during her last visit and discussed them with Stephen, but no one had informed me. Kelly's impulsive decisions always cause problems in my life, and this day was no different. Stephen assumes I should just know everything, and when I don't, he blames me for being clueless. Lately, Kelly has been nicer to Timothy, so he doesn't mind going to her house, especially because his favorite cousin, Helen, is there. "Here's your birthday present from me," I said to Timothy, trying to cheer him up. He looked surprised and said, "This is the same as the present Kelly gave me." I was shocked. I had carefully chosen a video game Timothy wanted after discussing it with Stephen. If Kelly knew about it, it must have been because Stephen told her. I looked at Stephen, who frowned slightly and said, "Giving the same gift as my sister? What kind of mother does that?" I tried to explain, but we chose this together. Before I could say more, Stephen added, "Kelly was struggling to pick a gift, so I suggested it. Can't you read the room?" You're failing as a mother. I held back my frustration, apologized to Timothy, and put the gift away. Stephen didn't notice my distress and kept talking. By the way, my mom and brother-in-law will be away for a while, so I've decided to take care of my sister and niece, he said. What do you mean? I asked. With my older sister in the hospital, it's hard for them to live alone. I'll support them. I'll take care of their food, clothing, and shelter. So please vacate your room. It seemed Stephen had already decided. He told me to move out of my room and use it as a storage space. Timothy was excited that Kelly and Helen would be coming. Stephen added, I know you don't like them, but they're my blood relatives. It's natural for me to care for them. If you can't accept that, divorce is also an option. I felt like I was being treated as a nuisance. Seeing Timothy getting closer to their family, I knew I had to do something, not just for me, but for him too. The next day, I asked Stephen when Kelly and Helen would arrive. He didn't know the exact date, but shared the schedule he had planned. I started cleaning up unnecessary items as planned. Stephen had ordered me to dispose of or move anything we didn't need, so I followed his instructions. That day, Stephen was out at his parents' house, and I was home alone with Timothy, since it was the weekend. I organized my room and got rid of anything we weren't using. When Stephen came home, he looked shocked and said, What on earth happened here? What do you mean? Is there a problem? I asked. Problem? Look at the state of this place, he shouted. I did what you said. I moved things around and got rid of unnecessary items, I replied. You mean you threw out everything we need? Stephen exclaimed. You even got rid of the appliances we use, like the TV and washing machine. That's right. I cleared everything I bought for the house, I said calmly. I added, by the way, this apartment is under my parents' name. I spoke with them and decided I'll vacate the place in a month. Stephen's face turned pale, but that wasn't my problem. He had wanted to live here with Kelly and Helen like it was his own house, even though this place was originally mine. I just did what he told me, disposed of, and moved things. Why are all the appliances gone? He asked, panicking. Because I was told to move and dispose of them, I said before walking out of the living room. Wait. The discussion isn't over, he shouted, but I ignored him. He followed me to my room, raising his voice again. The discussion isn't over. Why are you angry? I'm not angry, I said. I just followed your instructions. I picked up an expensive watch I had given him in the past and added, Oh, this isn't needed either. That's mine, he protested. Yes, but I bought it, I replied. You don't need it anymore. I packed the watch into a box, which was already filled with clothes and branded items I had gifted him while we were dating. Most of them were luxury items I had bought using my savings from when I worked as a secretary. Even though I now work part-time, I used to make enough to afford such things. Stephen's face turned even paler as he watched. Just then the doorbell rang. The timing couldn't have been better. Ignoring him, I walked to the entrance. But this isn't over. What Stephen has done to me can't be easily forgiven. I want him to feel the pain he's caused me. I opened the door to find Kelly and Helen standing there, carrying several bags. It seemed they planned to drop off their belongings regularly. Welcome, I greeted them with a smirk. They looked puzzled, but stepped inside. Without paying attention to their confusion, I invited them in. Once inside, I said, Kelly, your birthday is coming up soon, right? Yes, but... She started. Thanks for what you did for Timothy last time. Here, it's a bit early, but this is a present from me, I said, handing her a box that was originally meant for Timothy. Huh? Isn't this the one I bought? She asked, confused. No, take it. It's a token of my appreciation, I insisted with a smile. Kelly looked even more confused as I chuckled. This is something special that your beloved brother and I picked out together. If you don't accept it, he'll be sad, I said. Then I revealed that the gift she had bought for Timothy was originally chosen by Stephen and me. Kelly's face turned bright red. I need you to take this. It's a sign of my gratitude, I added firmly. She opened and closed her mouth, clearly shocked. Then, overwhelmed by my words, Kelly burst into tears. Hearing her cry, Stephen rushed over, looking pale. Are you not ashamed? It's childish to pick on a high school student, he scolded. It might seem childish, but I have the approval of your mom and older sister, I replied calmly.
Huh?
My mom and older sister, he asked, confused. That's right. I explained the situation to them, I said. Stephen and Kelly had kept quiet about what was going on at their parents' house, so I hadn't known about the dinner involving Timothy. But when I spoke to my mother-in-law and older sister-in-law, they were furious. They were shocked by Stephen and Kelly's immature behavior. They couldn't believe Stephen, as an adult, would bring Kelly and Helen to our apartment without notice.
They fully supported my plan.
I don't often meet my older sister-in-law, but she understood my side and even encouraged me, saying, "Go ahead. Do it." Stephen tried to defend his actions, saying, "I know you don't like Kelly and Helen, but they're my blood relatives. If you can't accept that, we should get a divorce."
That's fine.
"Let's get a divorce then," I said, surprising him. It seemed Stephen expected me to refuse. Shocked, he watched as I handed him the divorce papers I had already prepared. "Wait," he panicked as he realized I was serious. I told Stephen that the apartment had already been sold, and my belongings were moved to another place. I also had his family's approval. "You want a divorce, right? I'm happy to accept. Now, sign the papers quickly. I have a bus to catch at 5 p.m., I said. "Wait a minute," he protested. I repeated the same words he had once said to me. Disturbed, he eventually signed the divorce papers. Finally, I was free from him. As he hung his head, Stephen asked, "What about Timothy?" "I have his consent," I replied. "No way," he exclaimed. When I had talked to Timothy about it, he immediately agreed to come with me. I was so relieved that he chose to leave with me. This decision freed me from Stephen and his family. Afterward, Timothy and I moved into an apartment near my parents' house. Later, my former sister-in-law, who is now in a wheelchair due to her accident, came to visit with an apology gift. She apologized on behalf of her daughter and sister. Despite her situation, I didn't hold any ill feelings toward her. She had understood my struggles as a daughter-in-law and had given me advice in the past. On the other hand, I had a very hard time dealing with Stephen and Kelly. Thankfully, I will never have to deal with them again. According to my former sister-in-law, Stephen and Kelly were evicted from the apartment and had to move back to their parents' house. However, my former mother-in-law, after hearing my side of the story, refused to take them back. She said it wasn't right for them to return, given all the trouble they caused me and their plan to live together. After being scolded severely by my former sister-in-law, Kelly and Stephen had no choice. Helen, however, is now working as a tutor and occasionally helps Timothy with his studies. I started seeing a psychiatrist and consulted a lawyer on my doctor's advice. Kelly and others had spread rumors about me being sloppy and bad at organizing, which led me to take action. I received several messages from her, and this prompted legal steps. Because of this, Stephen was suspected of psychological abuse. The family court ruled in my favor and allowed me to seek compensation. When I met Stephen in family court, he yelled, "You sold my belongings." Those items were actually bought by me, not him. He was also forced to quit his job as a result of the case. Even though my lawyer tried to calm me down, I had a plan. I told Stephen, "I can return your things, but your behavior right now is still psychological abuse." "What are you saying?" He stammered. "You've been calling me sloppy for a long time." "It might take me some time to return everything," I said, standing my ground. I stood my ground, refusing to back down after everything I had been through. Stephen turned red and stayed quiet, realizing the situation. His financial struggles are no concern of mine, but seeing him face the consequences of his actions is satisfying. Eventually, Stephen was found guilty of abusive behavior and was ordered to pay compensation. He and Kelly can't return to their old home, and news of their situation has spread at his workplace. Now, Stephen makes a living by juggling several temp jobs, often alongside Kelly. I think it's fitting that they're together as siblings. I don't have any contact with them, and my former in-laws also agree with this arrangement. Now, I live peacefully with my son, Timothy. After receiving the compensation, I felt more at ease. I'm especially happy to have returned part-time to my former secretarial job. My former mother-in-law and sister-in-law sometimes check in on Timothy. I thought I'd cut ties completely with my ex-husband's family, but since Timothy loves them, I occasionally interact with everyone, except Stephen and Kelly. One day, Timothy said to me, "When I grow up, I want to marry someone like Mom and cherish my family." His words nearly brought me to tears. Thinking about such a happy future, I'm determined to keep living a joyful life with my son.